Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming near to the end of the formal part of the conference, so as people continue to come in the room, if you can just take your seat. We have a multifaceted end to the program today before we get into the part that many of you, I'm sure, have been waiting for our reception, our drinks reception and gala dinner. Before we sort of kick off here, I want to thank all of you again for joining us for this inaugural conference here in Hungary, looking at the Central Eastern region here for automotive logistics. I think we've really covered a huge range of topics today and really kind of dug into the meat of the complexity of what we see here in Hungary and, of course, in other countries around the investments in technology and high tech. As Louis alluded to, we did have a conference like 10, 12 years ago in the region. At that time, we would have probably been focusing a lot more on low-cost country sourcing, price issues, things like that. And it's, I think now, 12 years, of course, I wasn't there then. I was way too young to remember that. But now we're talking about electromobility. We're talking about premium vehicles, as has been spoken about many times. We're talking about exporting to virtually every corner of the world. This is a high-tech region, highly competitive, highly competent, and in many cases, leading class, or let's say best in class with many of the new and expanded operations, and that includes for logistics. So again, we've heard from government ministers, we've heard from the UK ambassador, we've heard from major tier suppliers and logistics experts here. And in this session, we're going to have an opportunity to hear further from a very significant car maker, perhaps one of the most iconic car makers, certainly in Central Europe. And we're also later in the session going to have some Q&A with a number of important tier suppliers who are quite active and present here in Central Eastern Europe, be it in Hungary, be it in Romania, and across the wider region. Before I bring on our first speaker, can I remind everyone once again about the feedback forms which are on your tables? As Louis mentioned last session, you can also use the app, but I'll get to that in a moment. Please do take a few moments to give us your feedback. This was the first event for us here in Budapest. We really do want to come back to the region again next year. Please tell us where you want it to be. Do you want it to be back here in Budapest? Do you want it to move to another part of the region? Without your feedback, obviously, it's your feedback which will dictate what we do. So it's very important for us to hear from you about that. You can leave it on the table, or you can hand it into one of our staff. Also, just a quick note, we have a really fantastic reception and gala dinner this evening. So directly, more or less after this session, you'll have time to go to your room and get your jacket if you want to, but from 5:45, we'll be leaving from the lobby to go to the Eye across, and we basically have the Eye exclusively for a half an hour for a drinks reception there. So you can ride that and enjoy this amazing facility before we go on to our venue for the evening called Kiosk. We'll be leading you there along the way, so you won't get lost. It's all very easy to find. But so just a note, just to keep that in mind after this session. It's going to be a fantastic evening. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, so the format of this session is we're going to have a kind of keynote presentation from our first speaker, Andrei Pacit, who's the head of steering foreign projects for logistics at Skoda Auto. So since Andrei has a fairly tight schedule, I'm going to bring him up now and have him give the presentation. Thank you, Andrei.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here today and to be able to share with you how Skoda Auto, with its simply clever solutions, competes on the global stage, how overall the globalization influenced us and our growth, and what do we do in Skoda Logistics to, in return, positively influence the globalization. So, I've been told that we are here for the first time, Skoda. Skoda has never been presented in this conference, so please allow me very briefly about our history. Skoda Auto has been grounded in 1895. It belongs among the 5 oldest car producers in the world. It all began with motorcycle or a bicycle, then it continued with motorcycle. Now we produce cars. Since 1991 we are with Volkswagen Group, and joining Volkswagen Group in 1991 has started an amazing growth for us. In 1991 we were represented in 30 markets in the world, have produced 172,000 cars a year, have been producing 3 models. And in 2018, the numbers we are looking at in 2018, it's the production of 1.3 million cars, and we are represented on more than 100 markets in the world. You can see the numbers behind me, how incredible growth it was. And because we are at the logistics conference, I'd like to say that it's thanks to the logistics. So Skoda Auto in logistics in numbers, we are having 1,300 suppliers from all over the world. There are 1,800 trucks coming into our plants every day. Our depot team manages 65,000 parts, and each minute there are 3 cars produced. We have 2 plants in Mladá Boleslav, 1 in Kvasiny, then 1 transmission plant in Vrchlabí. 1,300 cars are produced in Mladá Boleslav, 900 in Kvasiny. So this makes a very high demanding for our logistics, and it's basically like playing a final in Champions League. Only you play it every day and every hour, and you can't lose. Simply clever logistics. What is our direction? We've heard it. We've heard many of those catchwords today: industrialization 4.0, automatization, digitalization. But what I would like to talk about is the employees, the people. We have also spoken about it today. For us, it's the people that drive the change and that we rely on to bring us the simply clever solutions, the innovations. We have grounded in Logistics Skoda, so-called Skoda Logistics Academy, which is a system of courses, of training, of custom-made courses that logistics needs and each of the department needs to train and to develop their people. And it's been working very successfully, and it implements also the programs that are available in Volkswagen Group and in Skoda. I've been talking about 1.3 million cars a year. Now about 68% are produced in the Czech Republic, but we also have the partner factories in the world and also cooperate with the Volkswagen factories. So in Russia, we have 2 factories. One is in Kaluga, the second one is in Nizhny Novgorod. There was a lady that asked a question today and said that nobody knows here gas, but we know it. Gas produces Kodiaqs and Octavias for us in Nizhny Novgorod, so hello there. We have Asia Auto in Kazakhstan, we have Eurocar in Solomonovo in Ukraine. We have 5 plants in China that build basically the whole model range for us. India is a big challenge. Now we were given trust by the Volkswagen Group to lead the activities in India and together with Volkswagen to restart the business there. We have 2 plants there. One is in Aurangabad and the second one is in Pune. And then newly, from last year, we produced Octavias in Algeria, and this year we are launching Fabias and Rapids there with our partner factory Sovac. We also expedite to South Africa, Mexico and Brazil the transmissions and engines from our CKD center. The CKD center is operating from Mladá Boleslav. It's on 15,000 square meters. It has MKD line, SKD line, packaging business, multimodal terminal, and we expedite to the whole world, as I've shown you before. For us, it's SKD. SKD is for us the whole assembled car, but the chassis and aggregates. We transport SKD sets to Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Algeria. MKD is for us basically painted body. filled with parts from top to bottom. It's being transported to Aurangabad, and we basically don't need any press shop, welding shop, or paint shop there. And CKD we use basically for the markets where not all the parts are localized, so the markets are calling of the parts themselves. In Russia, it's the plant in Kaluga for a Rapid in China, and then we also use this for Pune in India. And as I mentioned, the engines and transmissions. Another thing is what we think we are doing better is that we have logistics representatives abroad in our key markets in China, India, and Russia. We use them as middlemen, as people that have the experience, that know the language, that know the culture, that give us first-hand contact with the factories, and in case anything happens, we have also the first-hand information, can react accordingly. I must have had the opportunity to work in China for 5 years, and it was the best thing that Volkswagen could offer, this inter-exchange, this experience, and this is what I think is also one of the competitive advantage for the Skoda. The second thing that, and I talked about it earlier in the presentation, is the innovations that the people bring. I would like to show you a very brief video about Skoda, about the concept 4-in-1. It's a concept, it's an innovation where we put 4 car bodies filled from top to bottom with parts and that we transport to Aurangabad. So more in the video.
Skoda Auto is a global company with manufacturing plants worldwide. This presentation explains the development of an innovative concept of economical and ecological packaging used for transportation of car bodies and parts from Mladá Boleslav to Indian production plant in Aurangabad. Since 2000, the shipping container contained only 2 packages, each containing a body and related parts, which will not be localized in India. In 2006 came the first packaging innovation and concept change, aimed at reducing the logistics costs. The change was also a reaction on more localization and another structure of shipping parts. The result was a packaging concept of 3-in-1 container. Increasing pressure to reduce logistics costs and ecological load because of the transport and constant development of packaging have resulted in a new packaging concept of 4-in-1 container, which allows for the maximum use of the container. It now contains 4 universal packages with bodies and components, which will not be localized in India. The loaded container then travels to our production plant in India. It is a strenuous journey. Therefore, any change, like a new car model, necessitates intense testing of the packaging, such as a train crash test or a test shipping to the final destination. The aim of the 4-in-1 concept is not only a more economical and ecological benefit, but also the satisfaction in the production plant, where the package can be simply and easily unpacked.
Skoda, simply clever.
So this was the concept that we won the World Packaging Award in 2016. We like to compete with the innovations on the European level, on the world level, in the Czech level. But it is not only about competing. That's what I would like to talk about in my second and final part of the presentation. We are trying, because we know that the markets that we are doing our business in, not always all the people are lucky. And the second or the negative effect of the globalization is that we try to act socially responsibly there. We are supporting for 2 decades an orphanage in Aurangabad, and Logistics Skoda is the initiator of this, and we've been supporting them so they could the kids there could receive new beds and renovate the dining hall and the sleeping areas. So we do these activities as well. The second activities we do, of course, many companies have their strategies how to protect the environment. All the initiatives that you see here, we focused in so-called green logistics Skoda. Our boss always says, he doesn't want to live to the day when the parts or the ship with the parts have to fight through waste and plastic in the ocean. So we are trying to load as much as possible into the container, reuse the packaging, do as much paperless logistics as possible. And to conclude my presentation, I've prepared a second very short video that summarizes the green logistics activities of Logistics Skoda. And at this moment, I would like to thank you for your attention and wish you the nice rest of the day.
In 2018, it will complete the construction of the first 990 kilowatt solar power plant in Aurangabad, India. In the same year, it will open its first innovation and training center, which will be energy self-sufficient using renewable sources. Logistics will continue to increase use of electric mobility in its processes and push towards greener solutions. The Earth is a beautiful place to live, and it's up to us what we leave behind for our children. So let us work together for a greener planet.
Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you very much, Andre. As I mentioned, well, I didn't get a chance to mention, but Andre has a very tight schedule and needs to leave fairly directly or quite soon to catch a flight back. So we want to thank him. Unfortunately, he doesn't have time for Q&A, but I think there were some great topics and themes picked up from there, which do kind of connect, I think, to what we've been talking about over the course of the day in terms of the global connections and links and the importance of technology and innovation, which is driving the competitiveness of what's happening in Central and Eastern Europe, and in this case, certainly for a brand like Skoda. So, and if any of you ever thought that packaging was boring, I noticed quite a few of you dancing along there to that song. So that's something new to introduce to our next events as well, and maybe a chance for me to plug as well some stuff that we're also doing at Automotive Logistics, including a new addition, a new sort of supplement focusing on packaging. And I think there's also some focus as well there on CKD packaging and stuff. So other innovations that will be coming out online in the next, I think by the end of the year or early next year, and in print in January. So just a little plug there. And if you're interested in having more information, you can speak to our team here for more about that. So for the next parts of our session today, we're going to have a little Q&A. We're going to bring up a couple of tier suppliers for some discussion. But before I do that, I should also say, remind you about the app that we have. You can use the app to ask questions, to connect with delegates. There's some instructions there again in case you didn't have a chance to download it earlier or haven't yet. Do take a time to do it, because if we have time at the end, we also have a couple of polling questions that we'd like to put to you, kind of just to take your view on some of the topics that were discussed today, so we can vote, and it'll show us anonymously your responses. So over the course of the next half an hour or so, as we're doing some discussion, if you haven't already, download the app so that we can turn to the polling should we have time. But for now, I would like to move on to the next part of our session. So we're very fortunate to have two important tier suppliers who are based here in the region, and we're going to have some Q&A around that. So Liviu Bidien, who is the head of inventory management and internal audit and control for global supply chain management at Leoni Wiring Systems. So Liviu, thank you if you can join the stage. And Dominik Szczepanski, who's FASBG Global Transport Director at Faurecia, a major seat manufacturer, again with a strong presence in Central and Eastern Europe. So if you just join us right in the middle is great. So it's a chance to sort of reflect on some of the topics that we've been talking about today, and talk a little bit more widely about specifically issues for tier suppliers, and as they may or may not differ to some of what we heard earlier. And certainly Liviu has had quite a bit of global experience, and obviously Faurecia being a big global company, so we have an opportunity to also, I think, talk about global competitiveness and in the context of how we're developing here, what skills we need to move further in technology investments. But perhaps if we can start just to get a little bit of the lay of the land, with a bit of introduction from both of you in terms of you and your role, and perhaps a little bit about the footprint and network in Central Eastern Europe, so that we can get the context. So Dominik, shall we start?
Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Dominik Szczepański. As you can see, I'm in charge of the transport organization in Faurecia. So to introduce more Faurecia, which is a tier 1 supplier and a worldwide manufacturer, and me specializing in transport, being in charge of the right now global transport organization. So we decided in Faurecia 9 years ago to build a central transport organization inside the company. And especially, which is very important, I think, according to the subject of this convention, is that we build this headquarters and we build this organization in Poland, so in East Europe country. This being said, that from the central perspective, we are managing right now from Poland all 50 plants all over Europe. And right now at this stage, since 3 years, we are trying to move the same activity and to build the same standardization and know-how in other regions to be able to use the same experience as we had in Europe and East Europe, and to build this organization in North America, South America, and Asia. So we are right now in the middle of this process. But what about European organization? So as I said, 9 years ago, we decided to create this structure to be able to find the optimization based on the effect of the scale. So optimization done based on shared flows between the plants, being centralized in one team, so in one hand, being in charge of this organization. And this is how we are managing right now. I think everything was said, being said today, but generally speaking, using each different kind of transport we can imagine on the market, including multimodal solution, rail transport, of course, road transport, and some others. And once again, this organization, which is created in Poland, is having a big influence right now on especially this eastern part of Europe, because in fact, we built also our internal network of the hub and sub-hubs, like cross docks, but we are managing this internally. So this is very important, and this is what is created in East Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. From my side, Liviu Vidian is my name. I work and live in Romania, so I take the chance now to bring also this part of Europe to the table in this conference. My role in Leoni is to be as an head of internal audit and control for supply chain processes. I also recently started to look for a training academy and also for topics that are linked with the new technologies and new approaches that we are able to integrate part of the supply chain. So as a company, Leoni, it's a first tier supplier. It's a global provider in automotive for products and solutions for energy management, for connectivity. We are known as a major wiring harnesses, and we are #1 in Europe. We are #4 worldwide. As a footprint, we have a very massive presence in the area. We are also here in Hungary. We have a location in Hatvan. We have major manufacturing footprint in Romania. We have 3 major locations and some other small, as we call them, satellites. We are developing rapidly in Serbia. We have just recently opened a 4th location in there. And in Bulgaria, we also started a new facility recently, and as well in other parts of the world. So we are present also in North Africa. We are having a large presence in China, in Mexico, in South America, Brazil, Paraguay. So we are all over the world, and basically we are where our customers ask us to be. So in terms of logistics, same as my partner here, as Dominic, we have every type of transportation you would imagine. We are operating also hubs on which we are consolidating different type of products, and then we ship them accumulated to the plants, and then we have tailored solutions for transportation based on whatever our customers are expecting us to do.
You're both very well situated to speak to what we were sort of talking about in terms of competing on a global stage in the context of a global organization which is based in this region, but obviously looking in being best practice and aspects from around, and likewise, Liviu, with your experience, how would you describe the competitiveness in terms of logistics and supply chain management of what you see for operations here in Central Eastern Europe, or perhaps more specifically, if you prefer, in Romania, in comparison to other global plants in your company or regions, and perhaps then identifying where the advantages are and where the gaps are that we might address?
Okay, so if it's to take it, let's say, from the country to a bigger level, obviously Romania has a lot to gain in terms of logistics, and it was referred earlier, the logistics index, so we are not, let's say, at the top scale of it in Europe, and we really have a good, let's say, potential to further develop. And when you are looking to the infrastructure, then this is really the main pain point that we have as a country. Now, if you take this out, then in terms of available competencies, for instance, for people, then Romania is also a young country in terms of logistics education. We have just recently started to have logistics programs in the universities, and in the past, then such specialization, such career track, it was not available. So that talks also in terms of availability of talent and the way you would be able to phrase to find specialists that are more than simply planners, that they are able to take a forward step on the company and do more than just planning, scheduling, and warehousing, and the basic processes. Now, when you look to Leone in terms of the way we are dealing the business, I wouldn't say we are confronting major issues in terms of infrastructure or in terms of competitiveness, and like everyone else in the industry, continuous improvement, it's our headline, and if there is any chance to create some disruptions in any points, then we are ready to embrace that.
Would you like
yes,
to agree?
I would like to add something. Yeah, of course, I agree, and Liviu said very important points regarding the people, regarding the know-how, which is absolutely the advantage of European market versus the other ones. But I would divide this subject onto two different aspects. One is from the global perspective, from the infrastructure you are mentioning, when we see some countries in the region not being well developed yet, and here we see the room for improvements. But when we are comparing our European market versus North America, for example, or South America, maybe this is not so important, but for me, from my perspective, more important is that in our local market, there is a know-how already built, and our providers, carriers, and all people related to logistics know perfectly what they need to do, and they see the strategy for the future. In the American markets, there is more concentration on the 3PL or 4PL activities, and coming from this perspective, and switching to the second aspect, which is typical Faurecia problem, is that we are transferring right now the know-how and the standardization from European region to America, but knowing that 3PL, 4PL parties there are so well developed, it is difficult to translate this know-how there. So there are some advantages on the different markets, like in North America, but there are also some disadvantages. I would really go into details of the people and know-how, because in fact this is what is exactly the problem of European market right now, especially in my organization, which is very visible with the lack of truck drivers, missing 100,000 truck drivers on the market, but also people coming to the organization. And here I do believe there is a lot of things to be done for the future, to secure and to make sure that development of organization in East Europe will continue and will not go so fast as it was said today to Far East, like to Asia. And I think here is something what we need to do.
So just to clarify, you think it will move quickly towards East, or not as quickly?
It is moving, and we will not stop it, of course.
Right.
That's obvious. But to be attractive for the people, we need to work here in East Europe also to make sure that they will stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And logistics can be an important competitive factor in maintaining production and supply chain activities here. So, I mean, a lot of interesting aspects to pick out there, and some of which we touched upon a little bit in the last session. So one, just to go back on the sort of labor availability. So you alluded to a big shortage of truck drivers, which is industry-wide pretty hard to dispute, obviously, and felt universally. We've also seen particularly in some countries in like Czech and Slovakia and in Hungary, and unemployment dropping to such a level that it is getting harder and harder to fill positions. Do you see this alongside the truck driver issue, do you see that in some of the operational areas of the logistics for your companies, or is that sort of less of an impact?
From my perspective, from Faurecia, it is not so impacting from other services, let's say. Truck drivers are the key and the most important problem we are facing. As I said, depending on the strategy of the company, but Faurecia decided to create our own network and internal management of the cross-dock hubs. So we are building this know-how internally somehow. But I know from my friends, from our competitors, that also logistics service providers are having similar problems to replace the people, to attract the job, and I think it's starting to be a global problem in logistics.
Yeah, I mean, Leoni being a very labor-intensive company, obviously for us, availability of labor, not only logistics, but also for operations, it's a major preoccupation. So on our end, then our HR, together with all the management team, then they have to do quite a creative job to secure the right people with the right competencies on the right place. So we can say that that's been challenging to staff all the processes and all the locations in time. But so far, let's say, we cannot say that we don't have the people. I mean, we are doing the operations, we are expanding, we are increasing our operations in the area. So despite of the shortage, then we are able to cope with it, and we are able to do a great job in delivering what we need to do for our customers.
Can you see, I mean, you alluded to at the university level, increasing in logistics, supply chain management as a formal degree, which feeds and helps probably support the sort of positions we have in this room, for example, but also partnering with training academies, apprenticeships, vocational schools, and as such, which I'm sure your HR departments perhaps are doing, but is there a greater role for logistics and supply chain to actually, whether that's partnering with HR to make sure the right skills are being addressed and trained with, should that become, or is that becoming more of a focus?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we just started to do on our end, and we are also persuading the organizations in the area to join us in an effort to partner with the local universities to be sure first that we have a voice on what they are teaching the students, so that when the students get out from the university, then we can make use of them. And on the other side, we are also working with the university, for instance, to give them the outer perspective, to show them, I mean, to go keep training insights with the students already. I mean, as a participants to their lessons. Also, we make workshops with them and so on. So we started, and I believe that in my side of the world, the things are starting to take off. So it's 5 to 6 years old, this trend.
I would say Faurecia is similar. We invested in Faurecia University. So from the perspective of training, all our team members have a clear career path and training program, which is managed in our headquarters. But from the perspective of pool of the talent, which we need to recognize somewhere, of course, we are working very closely with universities and engineering schools to make sure that the best students are taken, not forgotten. And we also created 2 different programs, one for the trainees for universities and one for the VAs contracts. So we're exchanging people around the world to get experience, to build the know-how.
This is, of course, also the great advantage of building a global organization and being based here. Perhaps a quick chance to kind of get the audience feedback on that quickly. You have your red and green cards in front of you. So firstly, I guess red is slightly more negative, so we'll do that way. Red, if you have faced or are facing sort of labor and skill shortages in your operations for logistics and otherwise here in Central Eastern Europe, and green if that's not particularly an issue for you right now. So if we can get a quick straw poll here. those. Ooh,
I think it's obvious.
yeah, it's pretty obvious. You should have known. It's a unanimous. Well, there's one. Okay, I think someone just mixed up their card probably. So maybe they need some. We should have had a colorblind test first. So what about now? To keep it going on similar, for your companies, have you introduced or are you introducing more specific training programs and outreach around logistics, not just for existing employees, but to recruit and develop students and retrain workers, etc. So again, green if this has now come in, or red if it's still not really being applied.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, so fewer, that's for those who haven't seen, that was more, I would say, red than green, so more red. So it seems that it's a universal issue around labor and skills issues, but only some companies are actually addressing it. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. And that's something, I mean, for us, definitely in organizing this event and other things that we do, to try to do more to bring together these sorts of institutions as well with the market, which is clearly needing it. At that side. What about, well, first of all, any questions from the audience as well? I don't want to dominate all this. I easily can, but if anyone does have a question, we'll have some mics around, so just raise your hand and we'll come to you. Not yet. We talked about quite a bit today about changes in the supply chain and in the value chain, right? And perhaps this will be especially evident for many tier suppliers as we have more electronics coming into vehicles, more software, the value chain starts to shift. Do you see signs of this already within your companies in the region, and B, how might they, or do you see them potentially influencing or impacting on logistics?
Okay, yeah, we didn't agree who is
no, first. I mean, it's just, at least you're both eager to answer. Sometimes it's the other way.
Okay. Obviously, that's a key point right now. With this globalization and the changes to autonomous vehicles and electronics inside the vehicles, that we are observing changes in our market. We are observing changes in our logistics supply chain and also in value chain. More and more electronic goods are coming out of the Far East. So that's obvious that our supply chain is changing right now. But also from a different perspective, we are observing the trend, especially in Faurecia, because Faurecia's strategy is to be the leader of the cockpit of the future, so intelligence cockpit. So we are investing very much right now in the electronics, like in the startups applications, in the companies even like Clarion or Hitachi, or some others. So we really invest in this direction, knowing that the cockpit of the future will be the key element for our business in the pretty short future. So this is also, of course, influencing on our supply chain and changing already agreed and built, even optimized flows.
So in our case, not only that we are impacted, but let's say we are on the driver's seat for that, because basically, we are a wiring harness company, and of course we need to respond to that. And changes are, let's say, all over. So starting with suppliers, with the internal process, with the layout, and also then with the way we approach the customers, and also with packaging, if you wish. So in every aspect of the process, then we see the changes, and we see that there is this trend going on now for years. So for us, let's say now it's starting to get traction. I mean, we do this for quite some time, so it's not really new for us. It's just getting to a different scale at this time. So this was what's happening for us.
What I can just add to this discussion is that because my partner is coming from Leoni, is one of our supplier in this case, so we are increasing the flow with our partners from Leoni, which is very visible.
Yeah. And that's also a changing aspect, perhaps, of the value chain, but sort of where you compete and where you cooperate, and the overlaps that become, the line becomes blurry.
In automotive, it's always like this. You don't never know who is your customer tomorrow and who's your supplier today. So it's a very connected
absolutely
relationship.
And I think the point for me there, in terms of the so what of this conference, is that these are not things that are just that are separate to this region, and in fact, kind of centrally driving the operations and the supply chain within Central Eastern Europe as such. Obviously, not only, but that this is a key part of the value chain, and perhaps as electromobility develops further, and where we see new plants and new kind of fuel cell activity, etc. This will be a competing factor as well, and the role that logistics and supply chain will play across that. It came up a number of times today, and I think if you were there for session 2, a lot of discussion around different IT systems, integrating new with legacy, and how you manage this. Even in a new plant, you often still carry over many different systems. Perhaps starting with you, Dominique, because now that you've built building a global organization, has there been a bigger emphasis on standardizing IT as well, and interfaces, and have there been some challenges in working through that, and lessons to share?
A lot. I can tell you a lot. That's a challenge. On the globalization, that's a challenge. Even in one region, even in Europe, we are still facing the same problem, that not all our systems are integrated properly. And this is what was presented by Christine from Bosch about the connectivity. I fully agree that without proper integration of the systems, we are not able to have proper corrective and efficient data to be able to manage our analysis and make management decisions about the business. So there is a lot of challenges around this. In Faurecia, we decided to invest in several startups, several different systems, maybe not so popular on the market, and try to build out of them integrated platform to exchange the information and to use information what we would need for transport, from transport perspective and logistics. And on the global scale, I think we made it. But in the same time, in parallel, we have our famous SAP system being deployed all over the world. And right now we are in the phase to build the interface for the transport management system on the worldwide scale, to connect regions inside one TMS solution being somehow connected with SAP.
As well. Yeah.
But there's a lot of challenges around. You know it perfectly. Data cleansing and efficiency of data is the key element. So it's critical. Without clean data, we are not able to do anything. Or we are able to do, but not properly.
Yeah. Perhaps some of the scariest syllables in the logistics lexicon, SAP integration, right? Never necessarily an easy journey. Is there similar what we're seeing in Leone as well?
Yeah, I mean, also we are aligned to the global trend in reviewing our digital capabilities and how we are able to gain transparency and how we are able to get visibility across our supply chain. And we do have various initiatives that we are running within our organization to align to this trend, because otherwise then we'll just remain frozen in the past, and the things will go by ourselves.
Not possible in automotive.
So it's not possible. I mean, you have to align, you have to get up to date, and we have different mix of how we approach the things. I mean, with external and with the internal developments, but we are aligned to the global trend of digitalization.
Yeah. As you're both tier suppliers, and particularly around electronics and system as such, would you want to send any messages to your service providers in the sense of how areas they might look to improve in that would be better suited for your business? I mean, in automotive logistics here at our event, we perhaps sometimes talk at the level of a Skoda or of an OEM, or perhaps at a a Bosch, so one of the biggest ones. But do you have some needs and customized areas that perhaps get lost a little bit in the kind of general market approach?
In fact, yes, we do. We have this kind of problems. And the general message I would pass right now is to try to follow the global trends, because in fact we are observing that not all providers are following trends. Even sometimes to customize the tool, I know this is difficult for the carriers to be able to customize the tool to all customers. It's not possible. But sometimes even the quick and sharp interface between the systems will help us to work together, I think, in a more efficient way. I'm talking especially about the system which was presented today for live tracking of the trucks. We are using, Forza is using different system, also coming from the startup. But in fact, the subject to this presentation I had is related to the ETA. It has been said that there is ETA alert sent to the transport organization or to the traffic scheduler or to someone who is managing the transport. What I would expect, for example, from the market, which is, by the way, on the market already,
Right.
is to have an algorithm to create the new ETA. So not only to alert that there is deviation, but to give proper analysis or estimation of the new time arrival, and taking into account driver pauses, traffic breaks, etc., etc. Right. And this our startup is working right now on this algorithm to customize to us. But these are the kind of the things I would expect from our carriers, like, for example, live tracking of the containers for overseas flows, yes. Which is also right now tested on and even by one of the sponsor of your convention, but it's tested on the market right now, but it is not really in use yet. So these are the things which me, from my perspective, or my team are using and are needing to be able to properly react, properly plan, and to reduce optimize the costs.
Okay, interesting. So as you said, not just the flash of information, but the updated, yes, and algorithm-based and properly harvesting the data that's available to optimize it. Yeah. Anything from Leonie's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to all what was said, I would say that we are living in an accelerated disruption of all what has happened in the past. It's now quickly going aside, and in the value chain, I mean, if you look, I believe that there's a struggle, because we have the leading organizations like the big OEMs, the flagship OEMs that are leading the way, and then there are the tier ones, and then we have some other tier two suppliers, and then there's an empty space, because then everyone struggles to keep the status quo, to keep the lead times, to keep the way of doing things, the orders, the firm, the commitments, everything else like it was 70s or like it was 60s or whatever. So I would invite that we are making the leap, and we are now living the 21st century for sure, and we are starting to anticipate. Not only that we get up to date with what's going on, but that we are anticipating. Yeah. And we come with solutions that are necessary to be able to really offer a value in the organizations.
So it sounds like perhaps some of the providers do need to join the 21st century as well. So if this is part of the message to your suppliers or to your service providers, what about to your customers in terms of what OEMs perhaps might do to further optimize your own planning, besides obviously to get their forecasting 100% right all of the time and to be able to predict every single variation?
You said everything.
So yeah, just eliminate certainty and uncertainty, and everything will be fine.
For me, right now it's difficult to say, but of course it's obvious that we are expecting to have stable planning and forecast. Maybe what we could expect more is to not have changes of the planning every day. So that's right. I'm not expecting every week, but at least every day. And this is having a big influence on our job, of course. The same as for inventory. I'm not seeing right now any specific point that customer can bring to us to make our life easier, except this one. Maybe one also important thing is the I don't know, it's depending of the companies, I suppose, but it's the management of the empties flows, which is not really it's not really under control. And I'm looking from the global perspective, not European.
Yeah.
And especially when we are talking about overseas flows. This I would really recommend to have a common workshop and to try to reduce this empty flows, which is empty flows is killing the operational income. So
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I would say that we are very connected with our customers, and we are really following in their expectations. However, an opportunity that I would see in terms of the customers, not necessarily, say, the direct automotive ones, but if you look to the truck manufacturers, or if you look a little bit aside on the commercial vehicle side, I would say that, I mean, it's good that they are copying the good practice of automotive, but unfortunately they don't have the foundations. And, you know, just creating expectations without developing the foundation, then this makes it a little bit of a struggle for the entire supply chain.
Okay. Yeah.
So that would be as a potential for the market in general, because I mean, if you look overall, then you'll have different major manufacturers of other type of products, not necessarily cars, and then they would adopt the practices, they would adopt the flexibility, the just-in-time, and everything else. But then when you look one level or two levels up in the supply chain, then they are not really there. They are not common developments, they are not practices, they are just expectations.
Okay. So more sort of strategic alignment upstream, and then more sort of sharing and processes there. And a very important point there from Dominique as well, I think, about the empty container management and flows, which I mean, we run events around the world. We cover our publications and websites, and I think Louis could attest to it's such a global issue and seemingly becoming even more of a problem. And I think the point you made as well, that it not just on a regional scale, because to make this work, it needs to be global. And this is because the supply chain is global. So I'm sure there's one or two sponsors who might have a view on that you might talk about as well. But thank you for those. Is any any last points maybe from the audience, if anyone wants to get involved? Thinking about drinks on the eye outside, I think. Maybe just from my side, to sort of finish our discussion points here. You both referred to accelerated disruption. Dominique, you referred a few times to some startups that you're working with as well. So I think maybe just to elaborate a little bit on some of the approaches in terms of working with innovators and working with, be it startups or developing innovative new ideas and systems. Is this become a more, not just strategic focus, but a kind of built into budgets and time and how you work with certain companies in a way that perhaps wasn't before? I mean, we know about a lot of startups that we're working with in R&D and to develop, obviously, electric systems and software, but when we look to logistics, it's perhaps more trickle down there. But is there any points that you would point to that have changed in your company?
Yes, in fact, okay, we see the trend. We know that autonomous vehicles will bring us intuitive solutions, personalization, connectivity, all of those. So for Faurecia, as I mentioned before, it is pretty strategical decision to invest in this environment and the companies, also the startups, and it is starting to be visible. But I would recommend for all audience to see our website where we are presenting the cockpit of the future and how this is related to the logistic also.
Okay.
Because we are showing there the movies.
Okay. Yeah.
How this is influencing on our supply chain. But nevertheless, to back to the question, it's starting to be visible for all of us. It's starting to be visible in our budgets, not only in R&D centers, which we of course we're managing a lot, but it's starting to be visible in our P&Ls. We're starting to see the new programs, new projects coming to the plants for the completely new technology. So we are also investing in the completely new product lines and machines in our factories. So to quickly answer your question, yes, of course, it is visible. How this is influencing on supply chain, as I said before, we are moving different goods from different regions right now. So there is the effect of scale, and there is the effect of the region's investment. Of course, Far East is right now strategical point, I would say, especially for this specific point. Yeah. But also, this what was discussed today, and I think very important from our perspective, is the connectivity between Asia or Far East and Europe, and also from my perspective, also Korea, also US. So all those are impacting our supply chain in total. So we need to have support from the governments, we need to have support from the carriers, from the infrastructure to be able to run and to optimize our flows between the different regions, coming out of the point which is investment in electronics.
Well said.
I mean, on our side as well, we do have different strategies on how to approach this, and then on a more general level, I would say that I mean, from what we would expect, it would be that we are aligning a little bit more the standards on a global way, because we tend of we are seeing the way we are doing things in Europe, and then we see things we do in US, and then we see things we do in Asia. But then when we want to put all these things together, then they kind of not match. And then we need to find additional shortcuts on how to, how to connect the things so that they will operate in the right way. But in general, yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I think that's been, thank you both for your time here to kind of finish our discussion. I think the points raised are really critically important to what we're talking about, and we talk about the region here, but also, as the title of the session alludes to how the supply chain will compete on a global stage, the role of logistics as it changes in that, and as it plays a big role in keeping the supply chain in Central Eastern Europe as competitive as it is now, and perhaps to the British ambassador said that the future is looking more and more east. Well, we can perhaps at least say the future is looking more Central East, at least if we do our jobs right. Yeah. But I want to thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks to both.
Very nice to meet you.
So we come towards the end here. I think we'll take advantage of the time that we had to give you a little bit more time to kind of get ready ahead of what's going to be a great gala dinner evening. Just to kind of remind you again on the details of that. At 5:45, we'll meet in the lobby and we'll walk over to the Eye. So if you want to get your coat, come ready for that, and we'll go to the Eye. We'll have that exclusively for a time, and then we'll go to Kiosk together. So it's going to be a great evening, so do join us there. But I wanted to just sort of wrap up. I think, this was the inaugural event here, so to say again, your feedback will be really important. But I think we've really learned right from the beginning of the day, through the minister's statements and through the presentations and case studies that we've heard, the challenges that we face, that it really is an important and critical time in this region. Yes, of course, because the investment that we're seeing, we see the accelerated growth, certainly compared to other parts of Europe and indeed the world. But the value chain is in transformation, as we just spent time talking about. Suppliers are changing, supply points are changing, the architecture of vehicles are changing, and so therefore the architecture of logistics will change. Not that everything will be autonomous platooning trucks, and we're only talking about software stacks and there's no people involved. I don't think that's necessarily the message anyone should take, certainly in the short to medium and probably long term. But nonetheless, these changes are happening, and they're affecting the industry that we're here to discuss today. And if we don't we don't react, if we don't become more integrated with data, if we don't not just read data, but learn to integrate it in a way that we can be predictive and better plan and optimize supply chains, then we will fall behind. And certainly, again, the future may be even more east, so to speak, than we are currently right now. So it's a critical point. Not to make it all about competition, because as we alluded to as well, it's about collaboration as well. So the growth of China and of electromobility and of One Belt, One Road gives so many opportunities here as well to capitalize with new companies coming here, new investments, new trade flows. And of course, with the important existing and still expanding as well. So as we said, Germany, definitely for many companies in this region, the top partner, and still important. And I think the logistics links there are obvious. We don't have to talk about that, but they're so important to everything we're doing. The UK. Okay, there's a lot of uncertainty, as we said, around Brexit, and I haven't checked the headlines to see if what the latest news is, but that's really literally anything could be happening at any point. But what won't change is the importance of links between this region and the UK, between skills and manufacturing and services, and of course much further afield as well with key markets like North America. So what holds and brings all that together, of course, is supply chain and logistics, and that's what all of you do. So I'm glad we had the chance to come together today to kind of highlight some of the key points that are and opportunities ahead of us. Continue those discussions now. This is not just a one-day thing that we do and then we walk away. For us as Automotive Logistics, please look to engage with us. We have our editorial team here, Joanne Perry, the editor, Victoria Johns, who's the assistant editor. Speak to me. I'm overseeing as well our content together with Louis Yakumi in the conferences. We have some news staff here as well. Kat Jackson, who many of you who have been on stage would have interacted with, and Richard Logan, who's just joined us. And we're here to support you, and we want to talk about the issues that matter to you through our platform. So we can be doing further articles and research following up on that. We have other events, of course, that we can connect you to, a host of other areas that we want to interact with. It was mentioned about the potential of a packaging workshop around to deal with containers. Well, that is something we started and are furthering, and talk to us about it if you're interested in getting involved, because we're trying to bring people together more. And that's, of course, what the rest of the evening is also about for you. So the time to just listen and be bored by me is thankfully over. So get your coat, meet us down in about half an hour or so. So we're going to have a great evening, celebrate the region together as we have today, and to keep talking about the objectives and solutions ahead. And for those of you who are crazy enough to skip this evening, we hope that you'll engage with us again soon. As I mentioned, please talk to us about any interesting areas of content you'd like covered. If you're interested in another conference, we have plenty available that for choose from. Perhaps of most interest for this audience may well be first week of July 2019, July 2nd to 4th, Automotive Logistics Europe. That will be in Munich, a new location. We've been in Bonn for quite a few years before that. We're moving to Munich, not least because we see this at the heart of the high-tech automotive supply chain on the continent, and really the crossroads there. So look to get involved there. We'll give you more information around that. But as you see, we're also in Brazil, Mexico, across North America, China, and probably more. You see Moscow's on there as well. So we're trying, because there was a question earlier about that too. So we have a global footprint and focus. We want to interact with you on a global scale. So please talk to us about that. Just one last annoying plug. If you haven't, do fill in the feedback forms, and look forward to seeing you all at the Eye in a short while. So thank you very much.